So very happy to be sitting here with Simon Milner, Policy Director from Facebook for UK and Ireland. I just really wanted to ask you a little bit about policy making and the internet and how it affects the work that you do at Facebook. Maybe could you just start by telling me what does your role as Policy Director entail? What do you spend most of your time doing?
I spend most of my time being a face to Facebook.
Okay.
So being somebody who policymakers can talk to about the company, about our product, and about the issues they are facing either from constituents or in terms of challenges they've got as policymakers, and to help them understand our service. And then beyond that, what we're interested in, of course, is legislation. We're interested in things that might either impinge or help the company deliver its mission. And we're also looking for opportunities for partnerships. We know that as powerful as Facebook is, we can't do everything ourselves, particularly when it comes to on-the-ground activity, if you like, as opposed to online activity, then actually we have to work with partners, and I spend quite a lot of my time doing just that.
And you've been there, I think, only since 2012. So what sorts of issues or flashpoints have arisen in your last year and a half there?
Well, number one is safety.
Right.
In the UK. In other countries it's privacy, but here it's safety very much. That's the issue on which I've probably engaged most with policymakers. I've given evidence to 2 or 3 select committees on that topic now. Some of the crises I've had to deal with, although not that many, frankly, but certainly have been around content. And then the other issue has really been around security. So the Communications Data Bill was the most important legislative issue I've had to deal with during my time.
And on the safety front, you mean child safety specifically?
Absolutely. I think there's a little bit of stuff around adults and people not wanting to see certain kinds of content, but the real focus is on children.
And is there more focus on that in the UK than in other European countries at the moment?
Yes, I'd say so. One of the things I'm here to talk about is this intense focus we've had over recent times in the UK, and it's certainly greater than my colleagues see who've got my role in other countries.
Yeah. Do you have any sense of what's driving that?
Well, look, I think we have a very active media in the UK that are very interested in those kind of issues. They know that putting Facebook into the headline of anything to do with safety will attract attention. And we have a political class that, for understandable reasons, is very responsive to what's going on in the media. I also think it's all to do with the fact that the internet is so well penetrated in the UK. We have very high take-up. Most children have access to the internet, whereas a lot of other countries that's just not the case. They don't see similar levels of digital engagement. So in some ways it's maybe a function of the success of the UK as a digital economy.
So in terms of dealing with issues like that, I mean, the safety issues, clearly it's a very sort of hot-headed issue. How do you approach that? Are there particular principles that you have to guide you at Facebook that you sort of stick to?
Look, we don't want people to feel unsafe on our platform. We can't achieve our mission in that kind of environment. We also know that often people may feel uncomfortable because of the behaviour of others. So we've learnt a lot about how to help people who are feeling unsafe, how to deal with that. But our biggest frustration is when people don't reach out. So the worst cases, of course, of all are teenagers taking their own lives because of things that are happening online, probably also happening offline as well, and they've never reached out. They've never used any of our tools. So for us, the most important thing is have great tools, use technology, have brilliant people that are sitting behind that technology to handle reports, but then get out there and talk about it. So when we do have safety crises, I see them as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get out there and talk about actually if your child or your pupils are in a similar situation, we can help them.
And what about the age range of your users? I mean, you do have a sort of a young user base. It's supposed to be people who are over 13.
Yep.
From a safety perspective, obviously the government's concerned not just about 13 and up, but also below 13-year-olds. So how do you deal with that issue?
It's, I think, one of the trickiest issues, and one where technology we don't seem to have the technology to solve it.
Yeah.
And also there's a really interesting dynamic here around families. So just last week, some new research was brought out in the UK from the NSPCC, which reiterated or echoed, I guess, evidence we've seen before that a lot of 11 and 12-year-olds, when they're on Facebook, their parents know there's a 13-year-old rule, and they help their children to join Facebook. Now, part of me thinks, it's so frustrating because it's really hard for us to do something about it, but I also think we have to recognise that parents are not making these decisions glibly. They want their children to be part of a digital conversation. often an extended family digital conversation. And it's unfortunate that a US law designed to protect children means that lots of children are, their first experience, one of their first online experiences is lying about their age. That's not great. So I really hope we can eventually find a solution to it.
I mean, you mentioned the US regulation, obviously copper, that you're talking about. You know, there's this very naive view that somehow the internet is not regulated. How far is it regulated, and specifically, how far is it regulated in the UK?
Okay, there isn't a lot that's specifically about the internet. And it's one of the things I'm going to reflect on in my talk is that actually Ofcom plays a very minimal role in what goes on in terms of my company. So whereas before when I was at the BBC and then also at BT, I dealt with Ofcom a lot. I really barely deal with them now. They just don't impinge on us. But that doesn't mean that we're not regulated. And the principal way we're regulated is around data protection. That's the biggest single influence on how our company operates in terms of EU level law translated into Irish law, because all our users outside of North America have a contract with Facebook Ireland. And that really is significant for us. So it's not because we're an internet company, it's because we're a data-driven company that we're regulated.
One last question, I suppose, about that. Obviously, this week is a particularly newsworthy week for Facebook and other internet companies. We had another summit at number 10. There is an argument that says actually the internet is actually more heavily regulated in the UK, but not by legislation, if you like, but by these informal conversations and pressure from government. And I would suggest that maybe the danger there is a sort of lack of accountability and transparency. Is there a danger, do you think, that we're going down that route?
I think there is, but as I'll talk about later, I think this is something which actually it comes, I think, from the Byron report. If you look at the Byron report, and she went through what are the options for how we deal with this, and she looked at should we regulate, and she rightly called out the chances of getting regulation wrong are really high. So although I do worry, I can understand why people worry about the privatization of regulation. I think actually it is the only sensible way to do it when you're dealing with global companies. I do think there are some consequences which we have to watch out for, but on the whole, I'd much rather this kind of social pressure approach to how the internet works around in terms of the safety issues than a regulatory one.
Fantastic. We look forward to hearing more this evening. Simon, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.